Thank you for joining this recorded webinar on federal grant resources and tools shared by the Maryland Department of Transportation. I'm Kristen Forty Thomas with the Office of Planning and Capital Program in the Secretary's Office. We wanted to share information to provide tools and resources for you on putting together grant applications after this historic Federal Infrastructure Act, IIJA, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law of 2021. The U.S. Department of Transportation has an overall mission and strategic goal to administer a large portfolio of funding and financial assistance programs to maintain and improve the nation's infrastructure. They are committed to improving the infrastructure and addressing other challenges to improve safety outcomes and increase the quality of life to Americans and fuel economic competitiveness. Each year, the U.S. Department of Transportation awards billions of dollars in competitive discretionary grants to fund safety improvements and innovative transportation solutions across the country. The Maryland Department of Transportation's grant strategy is to share and coordinate efforts internally and externally as often as possible to maximize grant opportunities for Maryland through resources and tools including monthly newsletters, our federal grant website, an MDOT specific webpage sharing applications submitted by MDOT, provide letters of support and other tools and resources such as this webinar today. As we go through the webinar, some icons you will see are partnerships, winning strategies, and funding. All three are key components in building a successful application. To date, more than 20,000 projects have been awarded funding from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. They range from smaller projects to competitive funding for massive bridge and transit projects. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law is a historic opportunity to repair the 1 in 5 miles of our roadways and more than 45,000 bridges in the United States rated as in poor condition. The law also contains funding to rebuild and reinvest in our railways, public transit infrastructure, and the safety of our transportation system. It further reauthorizes federal surface transportation programs for 5 years and invests billions in transformational projects that will create good-paying union jobs, grow the economy, and make our transportation system safer and more resilient. As of March 2023, $2.7 billion in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law funding has been announced and is headed to Maryland with more than 55 specific projects identified for funding. These projects include many different modes of transportation, such as rail projects, the trail replacement program for the Frederick Douglass Tunnel, port projects with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Mid-Bay Chesapeake Bay Ecosystem Restoration Project, rail projects under RAISE, the new Carrollton Station improvements, clean bus projects under low or no emission bus, expanding the fleet of clean buses in Prince George's County, airport projects under the Airport Infrastructure Grant, the Baltimore-Washington International Thurgood Marshall Airport, and reconnecting communities under the Reconnecting Communities pilot program, Connecting West Baltimore. This presentation focuses on the U.S. Department of Transportation discretionary grant funding programs. However, a variety of potential funding and financing options should be considered to support transportation needs. There are a variety of potential funding avenues to consider to support your transportation needs. There's also loan programs and public-private partnerships. When considering discretionary grant funding, there are a few things to keep in mind. Grant agreements are generally non-repayable once awarded, and project sponsors thus avoid incurring debt or interest expenses if completed successfully. In some other cases, grants may be a lower risk means of obtaining needed investment compared to loan financing without potentially impacting credit rating or assets. Under IIJA bill, it made historic investments, but funding was already increasing to existing programs. Here's a list of major programs under IIJA. Just about any type of transportation activity is covered under these discretionary grant programs. If you're considering federal funding sources, there are a few things to consider first. First, is federal funding right for your organization? Some questions to consider include, is the scale of my project or activity a good fit for federal grant funding? Do I have access to sufficient non-federal resources to meet the grant's match requirements? Do I have the time and resources to successfully navigate the federal grant application award and post-award steps? Is my proposed project or activity fully eligible? And am I an eligible applicant? The discretionary grant funding process begins with congressional legislation and concludes with the closure of the awarded project. The grant cycle, imaged here, is broken down into 4 phases: legislation, pre-award, award, and post-award. The applicant roadmap has specific steps that may differ depending on the program. Notice of funding opportunities are released by the modes when a discretionary grant program is open for applications. It's important to understand what's in the NOFO as they include all of the merit criteria and evaluation criteria. There are a few parts, which include Section A, the program description, Section B, the federal award information, which includes total funding amounts, anticipated number and size of awards, and a period of performance. Section C, the eligibility information, which includes eligible applicants and any cost-sharing requirements. Section D includes application and submission information, such as the application format requirements, submission deadlines, and any other funding restrictions. Section E is the application review information, which includes evaluation criteria, the selection process, and anticipated award announcement date. Section F is the federal award administration information. This includes award notice and reporting requirements. Section G is the federal awarding agency contacts, and Section H includes any other information. Once you have a better understanding of the notice of funding opportunity structure and program specifics, you'll want to maximize your award success by following this list. How can you navigate through your grant program applications? First, by submitting an application. Many programs use grants.gov to submit and receive applications. Write a compelling story. Articulate the expected outcomes or the impact your project would have on the community. Consider showing alignment to other priorities of your program or your agency. Complying with regulations. Compliance with local, state, and federal regulations throughout the application process and after is required and critically important for project success. Communicating impact. Articulate the potential impact of the project. Consider quantifying statements as much as possible or providing data points specific to your community within your narrative. Demonstrating commitment and accountability. You can consider setting up the project for success by clearly outlining the processes and procedures, such as tracking and monitoring your project activities throughout the life cycle. Preparing for potential solicitations. Depending on the program, you may have to solicit a request for proposal for partners and providers as a step in the application process. Consider program-specific criteria in determining the most cost-effective bidder. And then finally, demonstrating stewardship of federal funds. Demonstrating your capacity to effectively manage awarded funds may bolster your appearance as a strong candidate for federal investment. You can do this by engaging with subject matter experts, having a point of contact for questions, or even participating in trainings for finance or procurement. Additionally, one tip from the U.S. Department of Transportation is the key to an attractive application is crafting an effective, compelling, comprehensive story that demonstrates funding needs, commitment, and impact. The U.S. Department of Transportation created a checklist to help applicants prepare and create a pathway for application success. The checklist includes coordination between stakeholders and agencies. Within your agency, ensure that your finance, procurement, planning, and public works departments are working in alignment to submit your grant applications, successfully execute your grant agreements, and deliver the projects. This requires early and continuous coordination. Review the DOT calendar of funding opportunities. Each program's notice of funding opportunity typically provides additional resources, webinars, and frequently asked questions specific to that program to provide information on program eligibility, grant application requirements, and other useful information. Make sure to prioritize and align projects in the application. Think about which projects might be the readiness for funding, which may be the highest priority based on locally defined needs, or which may be the best fit for federal funding versus other funding sources. Budget for and secure your non-federal match. In preparing and finalizing your budgets, think about the needs that may need to arise during the coming year. A budget should be developed that demonstrates how the budget will be funded in full. Questions to consider are, where may this match funding come from? What processes and timing are needed to confirm financial commitments as part of the grant application or if selected for the award? Look at program-specific NOFOs. Each NOFO describes its specific match requirement, including the percentage required and what can be considered as a non-federal match. Ensure your project is on the TIP/STIP. Federally funded transportation projects are typically included in the TIP or STIP, and they cover a 4-year upcoming project timeline. However, if these studies are not included in the TIP or STIP, identify how they can be locally funded so that these projects have required documents to be competitive for federal grants. Know your Justice 40 designated census tracts. Discretionary grant programs give additional considerations to projects that benefit Justice 40 census tracts. Prepare your capital project's benefit cost analysis. The BCA is a systematic process for identifying, quantifying, and comparing expected benefits and costs of a capital investment. The U.S. Department of Transportation is looking for grant proposals informed by meaningful public involvement, so ensure that you budget for that. Additionally, the U.S. Department of Transportation provides guidance on their website on how to conduct a BCA. Build a strong workforce development and labor plan. Once established, you can highlight these efforts in your grant applications. Once again, the U.S. Department of Transportation does have a checklist on their website with suggestions to follow. Finally, understand NEPA and other federal requirements as you consider whether to seek funding. USDOT grant recipients must comply with a number of important civil rights and labor requirements. Additionally, any transportation project that receives federal funding must comply with the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, also known as NEPA. Although some of these topics were touched upon for the checklist, these are considerations to always think about when applying. The benefit cost analysis. The BCA provides a clear and full picture of the project to the application reviewers. The environmental reviews and approval. Proactively identify and plan for permits, approvals, and environmental reviews to show preparedness and readiness to implement the proposed project. State DOT engagement. Maintain open lines of communication and engagement with the Maryland Department of Transportation or local counterparts. Technical assistance. Utilize existing technical assistance provided by the U.S. Department of Transportation or MDOT, such as checklists or webinars. And then finally, accessibility. Consider compliance regarding anti-discrimination and accessibility requirements to minimize delays in your project. Evaluation criteria gives insight into what a program is looking for when making a decision to award funds. Clear and specific evaluation criteria help applicants understand if their project would be a good fit for a particular grant program. Some programs may assess on the common evaluation criteria listed here. However, it may vary depending on each program. The following list notes each criteria and the recommendations to include in applications. For project planning and scope, identify your project need, gaps that can be addressed through federal funding of a project, and incorporate quantitative figures and qualitative narrative. This is the section where you need to clearly explain your problem, need, and what the project will accomplish. Identify project readiness and feasibility. This may be readiness to proceed into construction if applicable, or your capacity to carry out the proposed project. Additionally, consistency with your project, articulating clear project goals and objectives for the funding, and the extent to which you plan to clearly establish your resources, milestones, and project cost to align with the goals and objectives. For staffing, this can include your organizational capacity, as well as your expertise or qualifications of key personnel, making sure there's a range of staff experience and qualifications. For past performance, this can be demonstrating experience in past performance in project and or grant management, maybe with this program or a different program if applicable, and also a higher likelihood of demonstrating you can effectively use your funds in a section. For training, this can be depending on the program and the project type, but you can demonstrate the existing capacity to train your personnel. For technical merit, this may be considering alignment with the program requirements and objectives. Finally, under project performance and execution, Some programs evaluate the comprehensiveness and completeness of the information provided in the application, so make sure it is very clear and correlates to your narrative. For monitoring and oversight, application evaluators may look for an application to include a detailed project evaluation and monitoring plan and/or strategy to determine if you are able to follow through with the planned activities. For project risks and mitigation strategies, this can be risk assessment in your application or highlighting any mitigation planning. Continuing on with the evaluation criteria, under funding indicators, some programs may consider a project's funding need in the evaluation process. For cost and funding availability, programs may consider the total project budget, the ability to provide matching funds, the strength of the project budget, or local financial commitment. This is a great opportunity to partner and be aggressive with your match percentage or find unique funding resources. For the benefit cost analysis, we've talked about this before, but to reiterate, the BCA can include measures of safety, the effect of the system and the service performance, competitiveness, or infrastructure resiliency. Under project impact, these can include innovative approaches to improve your safety, leveraging federal funding to attract non-federal investment, or plans to maintain future assets. Under safety, safety is a top concern, and some programs may value projects that encourage safety policies and/or address safety concerns. You can note the extent to which a project scope identifies safety concerns or how it will address it in the community and who will be impacted. For economic vitality and sustainability, you can include a description of how the project could support economic vitality at the local, state, or federal level. For a rural community focus, this can include impact of the communities, enhancing the state of good repair, or driving economic competitiveness and improving quality of life. This is an opportunity to incorporate community feedback or note letters of support. For project benefits and impacts, this can be, as examples, serving a variety of communities such as urban, suburban, or rural, or different types of transportation markets such as freight or public transportation. This could also include factors such as enhancing public safety, encouraging investments, or enhancing service coverage. For partnerships and coordination, you can include jointly submitting an application with multiple entities, proposing multiple sources of non-federal cost shares, highlighting public-private partnerships, or coordinating with local and regional entities. And then for innovation and strategy, you can include demonstrating technological readiness, using innovative approaches to improve safety, or expediting project delivery. This is also an opportunity to incorporate any type of innovative technique that will help take your project to the next level when being evaluated. The U.S. Department of Transportation says applicants may increase the viability of an application by demonstrating and illustrating commitment and impact using a specific program's designated evaluation criteria. Consider the data points and metrics that could be consolidated to create a well-rounded picture of the commitment to the proposed project and impact of the potential awarded funds. As we look back through the webinar and through previous grants submitted, after going through debriefings, it's important to touch on lessons learned to build stronger applications as we move forward. We've learned to start conversations early and to reach out to partners and ensure that they are a part of the application and letters of support. Letters of support must be received from anyone who is benefiting from the project as well as those who are in the area of the project site. Include qualitative data and quantitative data throughout the application. Don't just reference other reports, but expand and explain the data. It's important to explore other non-federal opportunities as well. Anyone who is a partner in the application who benefits could be considered as a funding opportunity. Make sure the narrative makes sense and is succinct and compelling. With reviewers reading through numerous applications, you want your project to stand out and explain why the funding is needed. As you look into your application, please realize that there are plenty of resources available here located on this webpage. And these are just a few from the U.S. Department of Transportation, but there are more available on the MDOT websites. Here are the websites listed on this page. We have monthly newsletters that highlight news, awarded projects, open federal and state opportunities, and resources available. You can subscribe on our webpage. Additionally, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at m.tsoopcp@mdot.maryland.gov. We're happy to be a part of the conversation to support and partner while working to benefit Maryland as a whole. These slides will be available on our website in addition to this webinar recording. Thank you for listening.